Django Unchained. The Speck brothers enslave Django and march him to his new owner's house in Texas in 1858. A German guy in a dental cart rolls up at dark and greets the Speck brothers. Dr. King Schultz is his name. He says he needs a slave to help him find a group of fugitives known as the Brittle Brothers. Django claims to know and recognize the Brittle Brothers. Schultz frees the other slaves and tell them to either return the last Speck brother to town or murder him and flee. He claims to be a bounty hunter after the Brittle brothers, who are wanted for murder or attempted murder. Schultz tells Django that if he helps him catch the Brittle brothers, he'll let him free, give him $75 and keep his horse. Django and Schultz make their way to the little town of Daughtry. There the sheriff enters a shotgun and orders Schultz and Django out. Schultz shoots the wounded sheriff in the head with his derringer. A wanted cattle rustler named Willard Peck is sought by the marshal and the villagers of Daughtry. The marshal is then told to pay Schultz $200. Slave girl named Brumhilda von Schaff, who was a servant of a German mistress before being taken into slavery in the United States, is Django's bride. Django and Schultz ultimately plan to break into a home near Gatlinburg and find the Brittle brothers. Django will play a liberated slave serving as Schultz's valet. Schultz expresses interest in obtaining a slave girl from Bennett for a high price. Django asks his escort Bettina about the Brittles. A year ago, 3 overseer brothers known as the Schaeffers came, Bettina adds. Seeing Alice brings up memories of Django escaping with Brumhilda and Big John failing to rescue Brumhilda from the whip. Django regains consciousness to see the Big John and the Little Raj thrashing a little slave girl for breaking the eggs. Big John is surprised to see Django shooting him with a derringer like Schultz and a Bible page taped to his chest. Django grabs Big John's whip and beats Little Raj senseless. In spite of his anger, Bennett releases them when Schultz shows that they have the legal right to kill and collect these men. That night, Bennett gathered all the plantation's white males to kill Django and Schultz. The people in KKK masks storm over the hill and surround the campsite. Returning to earlier in the film, Bennett urges the older clan members not to shoot Django or shoot unless shoot upon. The clansmen finally wake up. One of the lads spots Django and Schultz hiding behind the wagon as they approach it. Bennett has no idea where the 2 bounty hunters are. Django and Schultz, they are seen hiding under a nearby tree, Schultz holding a firearm. It blows up, killing most of the clansmen. Schultz admires Django's natural shooting talent. Django says he will locate and try to purchase his wife's release, who is thought to be in Mississippi. King Schultz, impressed by Django's wits and marksmanship, agrees to help him rescue his wife in return for Django's help collecting bounties throughout the winter. King is also taken aback by the Brumhilda's name and her ability to communicate in German, and informs Django about the German tale of Siegfried and Brunhilde. Despite his occupation, Django thinks King is a great man. As well as learning to shoot, King teaches Django how to read and speak in public. King tells him to keep the wanted poster since a bounty hunter's first successful poster is considered as a good luck. After the winter in March 1859, they return to the south in search of Brumhilda. On King's return to the farm, he discovers that she was sold to Calvin Candy. Calvin Candy is famous for raising Mandingos, slaves taught to fight to the death, bare knuckle for their lord and for betting purposes. His business partner and talent assessor will be Django, who will pretend to be a wealthy European eager to purchase one of the Candy's Mandingos for use in the European battle. Despite his wealth, Candy is portrayed to be unpleasant, arrogant, and ignorant. Django talks to every white male, disrespecting Candy and his guests, and although Candy and King find Django's arrogant and protective demeanor amazing, King and Django agree to pay $12,000 for one of the Candy's better Mandingos and follow him to his state. Candy claims that 1 in 10,000 black men is unique and Django is one of them. In Candyland, they watch one of the Candy slaves being chased up a tree by Candy's white trash workers and vicious dogs. It turns out that Dugnan, named after Alexander Dumas, the Three Musketeers, a story Candy admires, is a Mendigo who is caught escaping. Candy claims that his slaves might fight for at least 5 battles to recoup his $500 investment, and the D'Artagnan must be killed. Schultz gives Candy $500 for saving the D'Artagnan's life, but Django, fearing for the cover, yells that D'Artagnan is worthless. Candy has the slave ripped to bits by the dogs while everyone watches. Django glares at Candy but is consoled by the Broomhilda's return. The hot box is a metal hole on Candy's land that Stephen informs Candy Broomhilda tried to escape through his absence once. Broomhilda serves Candy and his guest Schultz and Django that night. Lara notices Broomhilda smitten with Django. Stephen interrupts Candy's contract acceptance and asks to speak with his master elsewhere. If Django and Broomhilda know one another, they will buy her leave the country and never return for the Mendigo. He then adds that he gathered the skull of his slain slaves that while outnumbering white, their brains are constructed for subservience, but white brains are made for supremacy and innovation. Candy then reveals that unless they give him $12,000 immediately for Broomhilda, he would kill her and examine her skull in front of them. Candy directs his lawyer Mogi to start writing the documentation transferring ownership of Broomhilda to the king. The contracts are signed, but King criticizes Candy's intelligence, pointing out that Candy named his slaves after the characters in Dumas novel, despite Dumas being a black man. Candy, knowing Schultz despises him, says he won't let the tourist go with Broomhilda unless King shakes his hand, a Mississippi and Southern ritual. This is too much for Schultz to bear as he extends his hand to shake Candy's. The spring-loaded handgun he used on Daughtry's sheriff jumps into his right palm and discharges through the flower on Candy's lapel. Candy examines the gunshot wound, grips his chest, staggers backward and collapses on the ground dead. "No!" cries Stephen as he rushes to the Candy's aid. Candy's bodyguard Butch turns around. Schultz apologizes to Django for succumbing to temptation and then Butch pulls the trigger on his shotgun. Schultz is sent back against a bookshelf by the gunshot. Just as Schultz's corpse hits the ground, Django seizes and kills the distracted Butch with his handgun. Mogi attempts to flee, crying for assistance, but is shot many times as he enters the foyer. Django is subsequently dragged back into the foyer, where he engages in a firefight with a slew of white ranchers. Blood flies everywhere as the corpses are strewn throughout. Despite their casualties, additional reinforcements of white ranchers come equipped with the repeating rifles. They use ladders to ascend the second story of the house and taken up the position atop the second floor balcony, where they begin fire on the lone Django, forces him to seek refuge under the some furniture. The gunfight ends when Django runs out of ammunition while Stephen and Billy Crash capture Django and threaten to murder him unless he surrenders. Django is carried back into the foyer where he fights a horde of white ranchers. When Django wakes up hours later, he is naked and tied in a shack. Billy Crash is about to castrate him with a hot knife. Stephen comes and tells the man that Django will not be castrated. Stephen has agreed to sell the Django as a slave to the Liquid Dickey Mining Company. Django attracts one of the trucks on the route to the mining business. He tells them that he is a bounty hunter and was pursuing a man worth $7,000 when he was arrested. Django is a bounty hunter who rode into Candyland on a horse with a white male. The other slaves also agrees. Slave hunting slaves, they are freed when the Django kills the transporters who mistakenly released him with a gun. He returns with a horse, guns and explosives. He finds King's rotting body in a barn, still holding Broomhilda's release paper. When Django snatches the papers, he swears to do so in the king's honor. Django is waiting at the top of the great staircase, ready to execute Billy Crash and the last two White Ranch employees. Django even shoots Lara, sending her backwards and out of sight. Django kills Stephen in both kneecaps after announcing the departure of the two female house slaves, claiming Stephen has never met a man like Django out of 9,999 slaves he has deceived while working for the candy. Stephen yells as he lies wounded on the floor that Django will be found and executed for his crimes and that the South and slavery will never die. The explosion destroys the candy's house, but Stephen continues to threaten Django. Django meets his bride outside the state on two horses. Django, like Siegfried, will become a legend.